Welcome to part one of developing the curriculum podcast. There will be several parts to this podcast to help you to learn how to use the ABC model in developing the curriculum, and also to help you develop your curriculum development project that you'll have to do at the end of the semester. This particular podcast will discuss Chapter 5, and specifically Chapter 5 covers the steps 1 through 3 in the ABC curriculum process. You should be aware that in addition to the material from the ABC curriculum process model from the textbook, I'm going to try to also bring in some things from some other resources and just some things I've learned over time about developing a brand new thing. One of the things that God has blessed me with is the ability to see things the way they could be, and then be able to turn that into actual something. Hopefully that will give you some understanding on how to go about doing this and in the real world at your jobs, and also for this class project. So our first step here is developing the program philosophy. You can use the achievement-based curriculum philosophy worksheet, which you can find in the course documents. I have placed all the different worksheets for the ABC model from the textbook and the course documents in a file called worksheets, I believe, or ABC model worksheet. I don't remember what I titled it, but it's pretty something like that. You can also see the example philosophy on page 103 in the textbook. It needs to be descriptive enough that somebody else who's reading it, who doesn't know anything about your program, has a good understanding what your program is about. To help you also understand what this program philosophy should look like, I have provided you two examples of completed curriculums in the external links. I think one is called Katie Dog, and I can't remember what the second one is called. But you can look at those. There are some websites, and you may be even able to search Google and see if there are any other ABC models for physical education out there. It just gives you an idea of what it should look like. And the reason why we develop a program philosophy is because it provides us a foundation for the program, and it provides a direction for the curriculum in the program. It gives us the starting point, and it also gives us a way to look back and say, hey, are we meeting the philosophy of our program? This is what we are about. Now, to me, it's kind of weird that you develop a philosophy, but I think you have to do the next two, like step B and C that we're going to talk about next, which is the values and your beliefs, before you actually develop your philosophy. Your philosophy should also reflect the needs and characteristics of the participants. Who are your kids? What grade group are you targeting here? Are you a college basketball coach? Well, you need to identify that in your program philosophy. It should be specific who your participants are for your philosophy. As I said earlier, like step 1B is values. In your curriculum development project, you should provide your values. Now, this is not actually identified in the textbook, but I think it's critical. One of the reasons why we spent time in the value orientation is because I think it's critical that you understand where you're coming from when you're developing a curriculum, and what are your values. You're going to have to decide on what are your values concerning physical education or coaching. And you're also going to have to decide on what value orientation you will discuss, or excuse me, what value orientation are you going to base your curriculum on. In your assignment, you need to clearly identify that we are discipline mastery value orientation, and give a brief description of what that means. What is what does disciplinary mastery mean? Always assume that the people who are reading this have some knowledge of what you're talking about, but not all the knowledge. Help the reader understand what they're reading. You should also provide your beliefs. What do you believe about physical education? Why did you get into physical education? Why is it important? Why should we even teach physical education in school? Why don't we just cut it out? Why is physical education important? What do you believe, as if you're doing this from the coaching perspective? What do you believe about being a quality coach? What do you believe about your student athletes? What is the role of physical education or athletics in society? So why is physical education important to students, society, and to you? And the last thing you'll write in step 1, which is like step 4 of step 1, is your mission statement. A mission statement is concise and clearly understood. Concise means short and to the point, and there's not any vagueness what your curriculum is about or your program is about. It's used to make all curriculum and program development and or implementation decisions. You always go back to your mission statement to know why you're doing what you're doing. If this thing, whatever we're trying to do, does not meet the mission of the curriculum or the physical education program or the athletic team, we're not doing it, because it's not what we're about. It should include your philosophy, values, and beliefs in 1 to 2 sentences. So it should be short, 1 to 2 sentences. And again, your mission statement is something to hold on to. Some businesses write mission statements and have them posted different places so all employees understand the purpose of the business, the purpose of why they do what they do. And so we're always reminded why we do what we do. And I know this is very important to know what your mission statement is and follow your mission statement. So once you're done with step 1, developing your program philosophy, next thing you want to do is define your program goals. And program goals are what the student should be able to do when they finish the program. When you get done with this program, you should be able to do this, 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 or this. When the student is done with the 7th grade, they should be able to do this, 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 and this, and physically, cognitively, and effectively. These are broad general statements of the program intent. What do we hope to achieve through this curriculum? How can we translate the philosophy into learning of real value to our students? How can I take that philosophy of preparing professionals to be exemplary practitioners? How do I translate that into actual learning? How can we ensure that the curriculum will meet the needs of all the students? So these are some questions that you have to answer when you're thinking about your program goals. And your program goals can also be written towards your particular values orientation. As we know, the disciplinary mastery goals will focus on acquisition of particular motor performance skills and or learning of related knowledge and understandings. Whereas the self-actualization program goals will focus on development of self-confidence, personal competence, and integration of experience, because that's what a person of that particular value orientation thinks is important for the curriculum. Those who have the value orientation of learning process, their goals will focus on perceptual motor abilities, skill acquisition processes, creative motor performance, problem-solving skills, and understanding about learning movement. Social reconstructionists will focus on respect for others, appreciation of cultural diversity, and commitment to equal opportunities for all. So language for your program goals is going to be different for each one of these different value orientation. And lastly, the ecological integration orientation goals will focus on personal meaning, the realization of individual potential and excellence, outdoor education, environmental protection, and the development of global prospect. Did I spell that wrong? No, on goals. They're going to be based on the federal, state, district, or local standards, just like we talked about in Chapter 2, that we have to have a standards-based education. And in our area, we're typically going to use the NASB standards, but the standards typically are really too broad for program goals. For example, and this is standard 1 for kindergartens from the California content standards or framework. Standard 1 says demonstrate motor skills and movement patterns needed to perform a variety of physical activities. That's a little bit too broad. You need to make a little bit more specific than that. Now let's look at some examples from the textbook on what program goals should look like. Now the funny thing is, as I was looking through the textbook, I find 3 different examples of program goals, also known as goals, in the textbook, and it kind of confused me, and I'm probably still confused about this, so I'll try to clarify it for you so we're all on the same page with this. Now on page 107 in chapter 5, they give the program goal example as all students will be able to play a functional game of tennis using appropriate strokes, rules, and strategies. That makes sense to me because that's what we want our students to do when they're done with the class or the unit or the total program or the year of school. So that makes sense to me. That from chapter 5, that makes complete sense to me. But when you go over to chapter 6 on page 117, which is actually a table or figure, it says this for a program goal: the student will demonstrate mature object control. Okay, I guess that's sort of like the one above. It's not as specific, it's a more broad program goal description than the one with tennis. And then on page 119 in chapter 6, they tell us that tennis is a program goal. So which one is it? The answer is they're all correct. The process, I think, in my way I'm thinking through this, is that you want to start with some broad terms like tennis, or with the middle one here, mature object control, and become more specific over time when you start describing these. Again, these should be based on the NASB state, federal, district level standards that you have. In the end, you'll have the broad goals like on page 107 in your textbook, which is again this one here, the one that gives us more descriptions of that for your project and what you're going to do for this for your final project. So what you're going to do is to identify the program goals you feel all the students participating in your physical education curriculum, or whatever curriculum that you are developing or program you are developing, should achieve at the end of their program. For each goal, write at least 3 justification statements that support including the goal in the program. Now you can use the worksheet that I have inside the course documents to help you go through that. It's a worksheet. There's a consensus building things you can do there too. That's on figure 5.5 on page 107. And in your textbook, those worksheets are on page 323 to 324. Again, I have those in a course document, so you can print those out. They're a PDF file. Okay, that was finishing step 2. Step 3 is a pretty straightforward step. It's the policies and resources at your school. For one part of that is what policies do you have at your school, district, state, or any other policies that will impact the curriculum? For example, do you have a policy on the number of students that the student to teacher ratio? Or what is it? Just state what it is. Do you have any policies on dressing out, grades, any of those type of things that you have at your school that you need to address, and so you're aware of that up front? Then you need to also identify your different resources. What resources do you have? What equipment do you have? How many teachers? Do you have a budget? If so, what is it? How much gym space, outdoor space, those type of things. And one thing I just remember with policies, what's your rainy day policy? What's all those different things that you can think of. And that is activity 5.5. You'll actually describe those in that activity.